Good day, everyone. My name is James Lafayette, though I will say many of you already know that. Last time we spoke, you all had wanted to know about my time spying for the Marquis de Lafayette during the Revolutionary War, and I spoke to you on that story, telling you that I had spied and did not gain my freedom for doing so, that it took an additional 6 years. Many of you have inquired since then about my life as a free man, and I felt that it was time to tell the world the rest of that story. As I said, I spied for the Marquis de Lafayette in 1781, and upon him returning to France, I was not granted my freedom through a technicality of law, because I had not, well, I volunteered, and I had also not been a soldier. I had not carried a musket. It took 6 more years working in the legislature and a letter from the Marquis de Lafayette in 1784 before I was finally granted my freedom in 1787. Nearly 40 years old, freedom for the first time, but as I said last time, my work had only begun. I needed work. I needed a place to live. The first thing I did was to find a job, and it just so happened that there was work at the local grist mill in New Kent County, and I went to work there for a time. I had already saved up some money and saved up even more to eventually be able to buy 40 acres of land. Now, it may seem odd that I was able to buy that much land, but mind you, the land had been probably tobacco farmed and was, well, derelict land, as it said on the deed, and therefore I was able to afford to buy that land. On that land, I eventually was able to buy my wife, buy my children, and life became, well, complicated in a way that it would become complicated through for nearly the rest of my life. Slave laws are not written with freed blacks trying to free their families in mind. It's written with white slaveholders in mind. They are the majority. The law, upon buying my children, told me that because I could not put enough money in trust for them, that I could not free them under the law. I had to own them. Understand what that means, that even though within my house they were not treated as slaves, it still meant that if something were to happen to me before they reached their adulthood, which was then by law when I could free them, they would possibly be sold in order to pay off my debts. They would not be considered my family. They would be considered my property. As I said during our last talk, I would not put it onto my worst enemy to have to own your own children. But I was able to free them. I was able to free my wife outright, but there were still more family members that I bought, still more family members that I freed. And it may seem that at this point life would become less complicated, but in 1806, life became even more complicated because they changed the laws again. And the Virginia law now stated that if a slave was freed, that they had to leave the Commonwealth of Virginia within the year, or else they could be re-enslaved again. What that meant was I had a new choice that I had to look at, a new choice that I had to make. I could free my family once I had bought them, but that would mean that they would not be able to return to Virginia. It would mean that I would never be able to be close to them again. For many of them, I'd probably never be able to see them again. Or I could continue to own them, yet not treat them as property within my home. The problem with that is that under the law, it doesn't matter how I see them. It matters how the law sees them. And the law saw them as property, which meant they could be bought and sold and treated as property. That was a hard choice to make. So many members of my family that I have not seen in years because the most important thing was freedom, and freedom for my entire family. And I hope one day freedom for all. But I continued freeing family members, as many as I could, even after 1806, for another 12 years, so 1818. So 6 years ago, I had to stop. And you may ask yourself, why did you stop buying and freeing family members? I ran out of money. The yields on my land were not as they used to be. Finding work was far more difficult. As I'm getting older, my body is not as strong as it used to be. I cannot work as much as I used to. I had to petition for a veteran's pension, which I did, and I was granted a pension, $60 outright and $40 a year for the rest of my life. Even now, 6 years later in 1824, I still collect that money. It helps. It helps me to live. It helps me to continue to support my wife, to continue to support my farm. That is what I do now. I do work when I can. Sometimes I travel. I've traveled to Baltimore to do work from time to time. It's what's necessary. It's what must be done. Here's where my life is today. Having said that, I'm free. I'm so much luckier than so many others who were in the same place in their youth that I was in. My wife is free. My children are free. But there are still so many. But as my life stands now, of course, in this time of October 1824, it's high time I'm going to see the Marquis de Lafayette again after 40 years. That is what I shall be doing today. Hopefully I can talk to him, and hopefully it'll be like no time ever passed at all. That tends to be the case when I see the Marquis again. He'll ask me how Sylvia's doing. I am quite the lucky man. But I realize I talk on and on and on, and you're not here to hear me talk. You're here for me to answer your queries. So you may have some questions for me, some thoughts about my life, about the law, about being a free man, about being an enslaved man, about the Marquis de Lafayette, about Lafayette. Who knows? I would love to answer your queries. So if you happen to have any at this point in time, well, let's hear them.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Lafayette. We are certainly glad that you are here joining us today, and I think we all can agree you have seen and experienced a lot of life, so we certainly want to jump right into questions.
Indeed.
Now, for all of you all at home or wherever you are coming from, please feel free to write in your questions for Mr. Lafayette, and we will try to answer as many as possible. So just to get started, you shared so much and you've spoken a lot about having freedom now and what life has been like for you. Could you take us back to perhaps that first month, those first few months where you did obtain your freedom, and what was that like for you? Can you just speak about the time and just that immediate reaction, understanding that you are now living as a free black man?
As joyous as it was for me, I was also unbelievably scared. Understand, the only thing to prove that I was free was a piece of paper that I carried around with me. That's a scary thought, to think that if I were to lose those freedom papers, I could by law be taken up again. That was a worry of mine. But even stronger with me was that I didn't have my family with me yet. That I needed to do what was necessary to be reunited with them. It's why I took work as a laborer at the grist mill. Yes, I can read, yes, I can write, but there are certain jobs that, because of the ways in which the laws work, I'm most likely not going to ever have them. The issue with being able to testify in court, which even as a freed black man I can't do against a white person, it means that I cannot testify to many of the things that I would write, were my job to write something of record down. most likely I'm not going to get hired to those sorts of jobs, and I knew the type of jobs that I would most likely have. I worked unbelievably hard for those first months, those first years actually, because the more that I earned, the closer I got to being reunited with my family, which was the most important thing in my life. It was all that I could think about. That's what clouded, that's what was in my mind during most of those beginning months.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you're mentioning your family. So I know and I'm certainly sure the viewers, we would love to hear more about your wife and your children. And could you tell us a little bit about your family life? And also, Morgan asked, what was it like for you mentally also to own your own children and knowing that if something happened to you, they could be sent in another place, still in bondage?
Those of you that have children will be able to answer this question immediately, and some of you that don't will probably still be able to answer it pretty quickly. But once you have a child, what are you willing to give up to protect that child? And those of you that have children are going to say absolutely everything, even my own life. So there are few things more scary than to realize that no matter what you do, you have no control over the protection of your children, that under the law, they may still be susceptible to slavery. And that fills you with a dread that I'm not sure I can put into words. Being able to free my wife helped. Sylvia has been wonderful. Even before we were able to legally be married, because slaves were not allowed to be married by law, but in the eyes of God, Sylvia has been my wife for a long time. She was wonderful, and when I was finally able to buy her and the children, and we could live on my farm together, understand, in my 40s, it was the first time that I could be in the same room with my wife and with my children, and to be able to enjoy their presence, for us to be able to enjoy our presence without the worry of someone else having control over their bodies, of William Armistead having control over my body. The only person that could control oneself was oneself in that room. I hugged my children, and I'm surprised that I ever let go. But of course, children get older. Children find their own way, and my children have moved themselves. Some are actually up in Canada, interestingly enough. I hope that I can one day visit them. I hear it's quite interesting up north. I would love to be there. But the moment that I was finally able to free them was truly one of the happiest days of my life with each child as they reach majority. And I hugged them again and again, surprised that I could ever let go.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lafayette. Now, we certainly have a lot of questions coming in, but one quick follow-up question from Donna. She asks, did any of your freed family continue buying other enslaved family members?
Actually, yes. It's not uncommon for those of us to be able to do that. The problem, however, is just how much slaves cost. The price tends to be more than most people earn in a year. The amount that you need to save up in order to be able to buy someone. Understand that there's a reason why the slave trade, even though it's illegal here in the United States, still occurs. That some of the richest individuals here in America are those who are illegally bringing Africans here to enslave them. That's honestly the reality. There's so much money in it. So buying someone is not easy to do. It's not simple to do. And it's going to take you time to be able to do so. But if you can, you will.
Yes. Now, Mr. Lafayette, it appears that you have several young admirers in the audience, an entire class. And if it's all right with you, I want to get a few of their questions put forth. And so
Please.
we can hopefully put some attention to several of these. So the first question, and they're coming from Indiana, Evansville, Indiana. Gabriella asks, was spying a big job for you? Now they kind of want to ask some questions about your past work during the war.
Good question, Gabrielle. Spying is a very, very difficult job, partly because so much of it is secrets. So much of it is what people don't know. And the more that people know about you, the more it is possible for them to realize that you are a spy. And if they realize that you're a spy, that means that your life will end. They will put you to death for spying. That's what happens to spies. So you have to be very careful when you're doing that. And, other than being a father, it's the hardest job I've ever done.
And how did you manage, Clark asked from the same class, how did you manage not to ever be caught?
Well, Clark, that's also quite a good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. In truth, you try to be as careful as possible. But even when you're being careful, you're dealing with subterfuge, you're dealing with misinformation, you're dealing with lies, you're dealing with secrets. It's impossible to know if you're truly doing it as well as you are until after it's over and you're still alive. So the fact that I survived, the fact that I'm still here to tell you about it, means that I must have been able to be careful enough, because you have to be unbelievably careful about what you say, what you share, who you share it with, and how you share it. And that's how you have to do it.
Indeed, indeed. Now, one more question from this class. Madeline is curious, and I think this is quite appropriate since you'll be meeting with the Marquis de Lafayette later. She just wants to know a bit about how you all came to develop the relationship that you have. And perhaps, is there anything in particular that you want to say to him today?
Well, Madeline, when I met the Marquis de Lafayette in early 1781, I was delivering a shipment to him. I'm not sure why the Marquis spoke with me in the way that he did, which is to actually ask me my name, to actually talk to me about my family, to actually talk to me about myself. But that was our first conversation. And at that moment, one, I knew that he was no friend to slavery. And I knew, even before I began to serve under him, that he would treat me in the exact same manner as he treated every other soldier underneath him. And throughout, he did. And he was quite a friendly man throughout that time. And seeing him again in '84, after the war ended, our relationship was still quite jovial. I don't know why me, but I do know that the Marquis saw something in me, and from there, I gained the job of being a spy. And that's what I did, and that's why I'm able to sit here today talking to you today about this.
Thank you, Mr. Lafayette. We certainly thank you all who are viewing, including Mrs. Simon's class watching. We're so excited for all of our young viewers to be participating, speaking with Mr. Lafayette. Now, Mr. Lafayette, we also want to take the opportunity to just, maybe you mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the laws and the things that you've had to face now, especially regarding the dealings and the dynamics with your family. Can you speak to perhaps some of the contrast that you experience as an enslaved man versus now being a free man when it comes to the law? And have you noticed any hypocrisies?
I don't know if we're going to have enough time for this. The law tells you a lot about a society. When I was owned by William Armistead, the law considered me property. It meant that William Armistead had complete control over my being, myself, what I did, and where I went. He had to pay taxes on me because I was considered property, like a chair or a cow. But upon gaining my freedom, you would think that that would make me a citizen of Virginia, a citizen of the United States, and therefore I would have the same rights, the same protections under the law that any freed person would have. The contradiction is that I don't. The Virginia Constitution specifically states that I have not entered into a state of society, which means that I have not become a citizen, nor did they ever intend myself, or as they say it, anyone of African descent, to have ever entered into society. Therefore, we are not citizens. Therefore, we are not given equal protections under the law. So despite the fact that the Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the ways in which the laws are written, I am not considered equal. I am not a citizen of the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's problematic. It means that I can't testify in court against a white person. It means that I have to pay taxes on my wife, Sylvia. So despite the fact that she is free, because she is a black woman, she is still considered taxable. There are so many contradictions within the law in that manner that need to be dealt with, that need to be fixed, or just need to be gotten rid of if you truly want protections, if you truly want the Declaration, that equality that is self-evident. The fact that Jefferson wrote self-evident, that means that once you are born, you are aware that you have it, and everyone around you is aware that you have it. Therefore, I think the laws need to show that that's what we have.
Thank you, Mr. Lafayette. Now,
Of course.
this is a pretty large question, but I think that you might have the answer.
Sure.
If you could change the law, how would you change it?
If I could change the laws, I would make it so that so many of them were not necessary. The Declaration of Independence, the constitutions of the different 13 colonies that eventually became the 13 United States, the Constitution talk about the fact that these rights that they're talking about, these rights that they're putting out there, are God-given. They are yours from the moment that you are alive. So in essence, you shouldn't need to fight in order to have those particular rights. I would want the laws to reflect that. I would want the laws to show that no matter what I look like or where I come from, I'm going to be considered a citizen. I'm going to be equal, and that I'm going to have the same say within the society of which I'm paying taxes into as anyone else. I want for the laws to reflect the ways in which society should be, to prevent us from having to fight just for basic understanding, basic need, basic laws. There are certain rights that now in 1824, I shouldn't have to argue about having. And those after me in the 20th century, in the 21st century, in the 22nd century, should at least be at a point where they are not having to fight for fundamental human rights. They belong to all of us. They are God-given.
Now, Tina asked, were free blacks counted as 3/5?
Tina, no. No, we were not counted within 3/5. Enslaved individuals were counted as 3/5. We are counted as a single person. However, we are not always counted as a single citizen because, as I said earlier, that citizenship question is that big question. Are we truly considered for reasons of representation? Are we always counted correctly? No. A good indicator of that is the franchise, the vote. The way in which we show truly that we have true equity within a society is to be able to make decisions in that society of who represents us. And at this point in time, I am not able to vote. I'm not able to decide who is going to represent me. And it is highly unlikely within my lifetime that I will ever see someone representing me in the legislature that looks like me. Unfortunately, that is the reality right now. I will let you in the audience decide whether that's right or not, that someone who contributes to a society is not allowed to have a say in how that society is built and how that society moves forward. I have certain opinions most definitely on whether that is right or wrong. I'm sure that you all do as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lafayette. Now, in keeping with that, speaking about a lot of things happening in the world, Caleb asked, could you own a firearm after the war as a freed black man for the protection of yourself and your family?
No. No, Caleb, I cannot. Blacks have been prohibited from owning firearms for nearly the entire time that we've been a part of the American story. The Constitution, of course, has an amendment that gives a right for militias, for citizens to be able to bear arms. But the laws specifically do not allow me to do so. I'm not allowed to own a weapon. I'm not allowed to carry that weapon in a way in which people can see, which is how it's legal here in Virginia. To be able to have it visible means that it is legal, but I'm not even allowed to do that. So no, throughout history we have not been allowed to own firearms, and at this point in time it is still a right that is kept from us.
Thank you. Now, Carter, formerly of Williamsburg, asks, how do you personally deal with the hypocrisy of men like Jefferson, who you referenced earlier, using language of enslavement to describe the colony's relationships with England while simultaneously enslaving men, women, and children? Carter,
Legacy is a very interesting word. And as we look at the legacy of those individuals that built this country through laws, or those individuals who built this country with their hands, many of which look like me, you have to look at the legacy. I don't think you will ever be able to ignore the fact that Thomas Jefferson was the main writer of one of the most important documents that I'm guessing this world will ever see, the Declaration of Independence. That will always be a part of his legacy. The fact that maybe one day in this country I will have the equal rights of everyone else. The fact that there's a mechanism set in place to hopefully make that happen. That maybe not in my lifetime, but in my children's lifetime, maybe they will have equal protections under the law. That has been built in by what these men have built. However, they also built it at the same time on the backs of my people. Myself being one of those. I was one of those enslaved individuals that helped to build this country while I was owned by another person. That legacy is always going to be a part of this country. Now, if those founders, as they're called today, decide that they want to do what's right and truly set human rights to the right, then maybe that legacy could be changed. Maybe that legacy could be shifted to these being men who have become enlightened and have moved forward in their manners of thinking. However, there's far too much money in slavery for most people to give it up. And I think it would be disingenuous of us to not include that as a part of their legacy. It is possible in your life to do things of great good, while at the same time doing things of great destruction. How you are going to be seen in that is very much made on how things happen in the future with those decisions that you've made. And for those of you that believe in a higher power, how that higher power sees you once you go to meet them. But I honestly think if your words do not match your actions, they're probably going to have something to say about that.
Thank you, Mr. Lafayette, for that reflection, certainly. We are coming close to our time, and I have about 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
2 more questions. Now, this one question, you are speaking a lot about, we spoke about the legacy of these men and their words and assessing the law and the nation as what it is now. Can you speak a little bit about what you think your legacy might be? I know that's a pretty large question, but have you ever given that any thought whatsoever?
As you get older, you always think about it. I don't know how you can't. To me, my greatest legacy is my children. They are happy, they are healthy, they have lives of their own. That is what makes me the most proud. But when I look at legacy as far as the larger country, back during the time that this country was ensuring its freedom, I fought for that freedom, nearly died for that freedom. I want for that contribution to have meant something. I need for my legacy to be about us, the America, the past of it, the present, the future of it, to find a place where we are all truly one country, truly one set of people. I hope that the contributions that I have made to America, to the winning of the Revolutionary War, will be enough for people to look at those who look like me and those who might not have had power under the law because they were owned by another, but to see that we still served, that we still built this country, and we are deserving of being equal, of being partners, and of moving this experiment forward to the betterment of all of us.
Now, Mr. Lafayette, I know that you have to prepare to go revisit and reunite with the Marquis de Lafayette, and I'm certainly sure you all will have plenty of conversations because it's been some time since you've caught up, and you've spoken to this a bit, but just want to leave you with this final question. You've now been free for nearly as long as you were enslaved. And comparing your life during both of these times, what are your final thoughts on the idea of the American experiment?
It is still going. It is an experiment. And I don't think that this experiment has gotten to its best results yet. The experiment continues to move forward. We continue to improve ourselves, hopefully myself, improving myself one day as a citizen of Virginia, as a citizen of America. Hopefully we can all move this experiment forward. Is this experiment where it needs to be yet? I have my own opinions on it, being that I don't have equal protections under the law. I don't believe, for me, that this experiment has reached the apex of where it needs to reach. But that's what this country was founded upon, was being able to do better, Being able to know that when we build something, there are going to be mistakes in it. You cannot build something without mistakes in it. But that mechanisms have been built in there to fix those mistakes, to move those things forward, to become better people, to become more thoughtful people. I can only hope that that is truly what this American experiment is. But it will continue on, and I hope that I will have many more years of continuing on in it. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story, for taking the time to listen to my words. There's an African proverb that talks about you're never forgotten as long as people speak of you, as long as your name is spoken. And you all have continued to speak on me and continued to speak my name. And that fills me with so much gratitude and so much hope. Thank you for that. And good day to you all.
Thank you to all of our donors for your continued generous support of our programming. A special thank you to Ferguson Cares for their sponsorship of all our online offerings for Black History Month. Thanks again.